Either way.
All right, so it's 6:30. Is everybody ready to get started? Scarlett, you good? You good? Yep. Okay. Manny? Hello. I'm good. How are you doing? You on the agenda tonight?
Yeah.
The name? Okay, thank you. Manny, let us know if you're ready. Ready to go? Okay. So good evening, everyone. This is the Village of Biscayne Park Planning and Zoning Board meeting for Monday, October 18th, 2021. It is now 6:30. Do the roll call. Edward Leyva.
Present.
Okay, Scarlett. Scarlett Hammonds. I'm sorry.
Testing.
Manny
Here.
Espinoza. HR, as well as SB from the building department. All right, so we'll go ahead and take care of the residents that are here. We can let everybody go on their way. First would be Old Business A Thompson, 641 Northeast 114th Street driveway. There you go. I'm going in order of the agenda too, so just bear with us. Okay, new gravel driveway replacing concrete strips. Okay, so I think we needed more detail the last time, correct? Okay. You're like right here, right there, right? Okay. All right, so this is a gravel driveway. Do you know what type of gravel it is? Do you have it here by any chance? Oh, that'd be great. Huh. So this is 8 feet from the property line. You guys have the dimensions there?
Yep. Mine says 9, but
Oh.
or I think
All right, you know what? I'm sitting here squinting. I should put my glasses on. Hey, Sandra. You too. Sandra sure is added to join the meeting. So you have the proper dimensions 8 and 4 all the way around?
Oh,
16.
Oh,
The gravel driveway.
I don't know. He called it. I think it was called Ford or something.
How far is
It does look like 57 rough, like you're saying, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's
is it, you're coming from the street in 26 and that 21 foot 6 inches? Yeah. Everybody good with this? Any questions?
Yeah, sorry, Gage. No question.
Everybody make sure your microphones are on. You got a green light.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure on the pervious space calcs, like not calculated and not defined in terrain. Note, not sure what that means.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Just looking at the impervious calculations under the swale right of way, it's not applicable, not defined in terrain. I'm not sure what is meant by that, but. No, we just have, basically the calculations of pervious and impervious, right?
We have, yeah, even note here, it says not defined as in terrain. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what that
so I
means.
didn't know what that note means, that whoever submitted the application, yeah.
Well, I mean, you're doing gravel, so
Yeah,
you're not,
you're,
your impervious calculations are fine. 0, pretty much. Yeah, but.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
just that,
what that note means.
yeah, it's just that does the gravel exceed 40%, right? Which is the question, which is the issue we have always.
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking, because you can't tell from the calculations because it's not calculated.
well, but we can look at the survey. I mean, the survey, he has a 75-foot lot. So that's the problem, is this document is impervious versus pervious.
Yeah.
So lot coverage itself, I mean, he's 17.6 by 21, and the lot is 75 feet wide, so I don't think he's going over.
Yeah.
But I see your point. Any other comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll motion approval.
Second.
Okay, Scarlett, Danette, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, good, thank you. Somebody came in. Are you on the agenda tonight? The name? Aberist, okay, 11709. Are you together? Okay. All right, next would be Miller, 702 Northeast 114th Street for a fence.
Turn the mic on,
That's me.
please.
Hello?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. At the last meeting, which I attended, I was given approval for a 6-foot wooden fence across the back of the property line. Again, this address is 702 Northeast 114th Street. It's a corner lot. So 6 feet across the back on the property line, and then 4 feet wooden fence with a 13-foot setback on the roadway. I'd like to appeal to you tonight to make that 4-foot fence a 6-foot fence, which I think is fairly common in the park. It'll be behind a 6-foot hedge, so it's pretty much out of sight too.
Yeah, but I mean, the code is pretty clear on side yard setbacks, so in order
13
to have
feet
a
is the set.
6-foot fence, you have to be 7 feet back from the property line.
It's 13 feet back from the
Property line, not the street,
Oh.
property line,
7 feet back on the side, huh?
from the property line, yeah. You can have a 4-foot fence at 3 foot from the property line.
Right, that's the 13-foot that you mentioned last meeting.
Yeah, if
So now we're up to, I'm sorry, 17 feet,
um,
7 feet from the property line. Is that what you?
it would be 7 feet from the property line, so I'm assuming, it's hard to tell from your, it doesn't actually say it on the, oh, but you have a 9.7-foot parkway and a 10-foot parkway, yes, so
Yeah.
that would be 17 feet from the street.
So it'd be
If you wanted to
7
do
feet.
6 feet, but you could do 4 feet at 13 feet, which is what we approved.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with the 4 feet then, because that gives me a little extra yard.
Yeah, and then you can grow your hedge up. for
Yeah,
privacy
the hedge
part
is
of it.
already 6 foot. It's, we have grandchildren now, so it's more of a security measure, just so they can't run through the hedge.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, so we'll stick with what we got then.
okay, so this will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a walk-on, Savitskaya, but I'm gonna put it, since it's not on the agenda, it'll be last. It'll be old business C, but, so we're gonna keep on going to the residents here that are on the agenda. So next will be Building B, Resto, 910 Northeast 117th Street for paint. Hello.
Hi.
You want to do the doors or the walls gray and the door blue.
Correct.
And the roof color, is it just dirty or is that a gray color?
That's a great color. Recently pressure washed, by the way.
Oh, you were with us last time with the wall in the front.
Yeah, and my
Okay.
wife wanted to do the extra wall. front.
And the awnings are black?
They're blue, but they're being removed, which guys gave me permission to remove last time.
Okay. So
They're
they're
blue,
not, there's not
actually.
gonna be any awnings.
And the brick also you were removing per the
We're
previous
removing the
approval.
brick.
Okay, so it'll just be the
Just a
walls
smooth
and the door at this
walls
point,
On the front.
and your window frames are white.
Yes, correct.
Any questions? I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
A second.
Ed and Sandra, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I also have Mike.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Second one was. All right, so we also have another one, Resto 12023 Northeast 118th Street, or no, Northeast 8th Avenue, I'm sorry. It's number I, stucco cement.
The application is just a stucco. What, may I ask, what's the other plan? Because right now it's boarded up, appears from the photos.
So I don't have the windows yet.
Huh.
Waiting for the windows, which you
Okay.
guys have approved for. They're
Okay.
coming. That's where they're boarded up. But they had to take them all off because my understanding was that the brick was hollow. So they had to reframe everything to
Yeah.
make it 30 for impact windows.
Yeah.
And that's what messed up the whole thing. That's why it's still boarded up. I'm waiting for the windows. Hopefully this week they're coming up.
Gotcha. Then I guess you'd have to come in for another application for the paint color once you stucco
I
it.
have already. It's white. She's already given it to me.
You're taking all this.
Oh, it's one of the standard colors that are, yeah, okay.
Sorry, what?
You're taking all the brick off, correct?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
gonna make it
such a-
nice and smooth.
Such a
all-
shame.
all throughout. Yeah.
But, and then, I'm sorry, you are coming in for a paint permit?
No, I already have it. It's what plain white. It's one of the
Approved colors?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just a reminder, all paint colors on the walls have to be flat. So non-shiny, no satin, no eggshell, but on the trim can be satin.
There's no trim or anything.
Any questions on the board for this application?
Nope.
I'll take a motion.
I'll motion approval.
Okay, Scarlett,
Second?
Ed, second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, next will be Mendez, 11701 Northeast 10th Avenue for paint.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
All right, wall colors, Normandy.
We're basically painting the walls in a darker tone and then the window frames are white. So all the trimming across the house, the little hits on the side will stay white. I don't
So
know
the
if you have the
little- yeah, the
picture
little-
there.
the
So the
bricks.
little blocks would be white and then the Normandy would be the entire house. And then the trim on top of the house, I guess it's called the roof
The fascia,
wash.
the
Yeah,
fascia.
we would do it in a little darker tone. I think I have the color there in the application.
Yeah.
So that it
blue
doesn't
note.
get stained with the roof. You know, we don't have the water kind of sits from the oak trees and it always stains the white. So we're thinking of doing that. If we don't like it, then we'll go back to white, but we wouldn't do anything like too
But you're
crazy.
just talking about the little.
Yeah, the
fascia.
little strip on top.
Okay, and then the roof stays the color it is, right?
Yeah,
Nothing changes there?
until we replace it eventually.
It looks good. Any questions on the board?
And the front door, because it's kind of a teal, is that going to stay?
So we're
or-
looking at the teal as the darkest we would go. We wouldn't go any darker than that. we might even go on a lighter color, to be honest. The door is still an if, maybe. I
It's
kinda
already,
wanna-
it's teal currently though,
It's
no?
a dark, right now it's a turquoise, bright turquoise. It's gonna go into a dark teal color, like more into the bluish side.
It's deep ocean.
Yeah, deep ocean. Like a cottage look. Yeah, that's what we want to do. Like a mid-century modern cottage look would be the idea.
Take a motion. Anybody, no other further questions? Manny?
I'll second.
Ed, second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too, thanks. Next will be Building F, Aberisk, 11709 North 11th Avenue for 10. What is a tent?
For an event or?
So, is there a driveway there or is the car parked on anything particular?
So it's essentially a carport?
Yeah, you are allowed to have a carport.
Yeah.
So if it's a tent, you're not allowed to have it in the front setback. But if it's a carport and you meet the requirements of a carport, you can have a carport. So I said, if it's a tent, you cannot have it in the front setback because we don't allow structures in the front setbacks or any setbacks. Except as noted by the code, which would be a carport. So if you wanted to do a carport, you could, but you'd have to meet the requirements of a carport, the size, the way it's constructed, it has to be permanently attached to the ground, it has to be done in aluminum and canvas. So I'm not sure what your is this something that's already there or? Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's canvas, is that what you're saying? Canvas? Canvas? Is it like a plastic?
Is there a picture here?
It's in the back, yeah, last page of the package.
Oh, so this is like one of those PVC and plastic ones.
Yeah, so I'm just looking in the non-conforming uses and tent is non-conforming. So tents, trailers, truck trailers, mobile homes, amusement parks, bungalow courts, chicken houses, dog kennels, rabbit hutches, nightclubs, etc. are not approved.
Well, we can't speak to those because we don't know which addresses, but our code does address that trailers and boats need to be parked in a certain way now. So if they're not being parked in the right way, then that's up to the code enforcement office department to take care of that. But regarding yours, what did you just quote, Ed? I'm sorry.
3
You're saying the
point,
things that are not allowed, correct?
correct, yeah.
Yeah, so tents are not something that is allowed in our code. Okay, then. Okay. think those are for Halloween. I think they just got put up for, I mean, there's no way that that would be legally able to contain. I think they were there for Halloween decorations. Okay, but again, you have a side front and you, again, you would be allowed to put a carport if you wanted to go for a carport. Yes, yes.
You considered a car cover? Yeah. No, that's not a tent. I mean, just a car cover. It fits tightly to the car. Yeah, no, I'm saying, have you considered an alternative, which is just a car cover, which fits tightly to the car? It's just on the car. It's not a structure. Yeah. Yeah, because again, unfortunately, tents just aren't permitted. And, you know, for an event, yes, but as a permanent solution to cover a car in the front. Yeah, but it's not for an event either. It's not for a day. No. Yeah, so. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's not permitted by the code, unfortunately. A carport would be, or a garage structure, or. Yeah, a carport is more. Yeah, a carport is more permanent, yes, yes. It's not that we would
Gravel isn't.
want you to do that.
Have gravel.
Allowed to have gravel, as long as,
You can,
is it an actual gravel driveway that's been installed?
you can have gravel under a
You have the
carport.
Gravel driveway, but you have, if you wanted to have this car covered, you would have to get it permitted as a carport, which would then be required to do the structural, the put it into the ground and the, you know, these are temporary, like little party tents, I guess that's the best way to describe them, but they're not meant to be permanently installed in, you know, homes.
So
It's not in Biscayne Park.
I know, but but this thing that you have a picture of has like windows and sides and it's. Okay, but hold on. The thing that I have a picture of here, which if you can come over here, please, if you come look at my computer,
Pictured with.
this thing has like windows and sides. Right, that's like a house made out of canvas for a car. Like I don't even know what this is. If you want to, I know, but if you want to cover a car, then you have to get a carport because it's something that you want to cover a car so it is in a lasting way and doesn't fall apart in 6 months. This is not made to be left outside for any long period of time. This is made for a special event and then it gets packed up. But this is not designed to withstand wind or debris or I mean, this is a structure that you would use for a party. Okay, but maybe if it was like disposable and you lived on 30 acres or something, but like there's this can't, if you want a carport, just, can you put a carport in? Do you want to are you going to keep a car there for a long period of time? And then that's it? And you're going to throw this thing out? Well, I don't know. I mean, listen, this is really, I think if you want to, okay. No, I don't. I don't want you to throw it out. I'm just curious. The solution, I think the solution would be if you need to protect the car before you ship it to Europe, I think the solution would be to get a cover for the car, a car cover, and cover the car with a car cover. I don't think you need to build this house, this. Oh, okay. I don't think you need to build this. It looks, yeah, it just, I'd never seen anything like this in Biscayne Park. I've been here for a long time. All right, well, I'm sorry.
So
Listen, you're right. You're right. People do a lot of stuff they shouldn't do here. And what we deal with a lot at this board? We deal with every single meeting. We deal with at least 5 or 6 instances of after the fact permits where people have code violations and this and that. And we have to, it's like, they're pretty vigilant about this stuff. They have a job to do. All right, well, there's. I understand. There's other people here that have to speak and I don't want to belabor it. I just think, so what our solution was.
It's just, I don't want to even speak to the adequacy of that as a.
Yeah, it's not even,
Sometimes it's just not permitted by the. code.
just can't.
Put a tent in your front yard for, other than an event. So it's just not, so there's a car cover, there's a carport would be compliant solutions. That's it.
I'm sorry.
take a motion, please. 'Cause
Yeah.
we've given you the option.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter if it's a front, it's a, by the terms of the code, it's a frontage. Yeah, it might not be where your front door is, but it's still a frontage. And you can't have a tent. You just can't. I mean, it's just.
Ma'am, sir, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. There are other people here that have issues as well. I'm going to make a motion to deny this. And we've tried to give you a solution. I'm sorry. I know you spent money on it already. This stinks. That's not a good outcome for anybody. But I got to make the motion. So I'm making a motion to deny. All right.
Sure. Do it. Come
If
back.
you.
I think, okay, so
direct it to-
I mean, if that's what you want to do, please come back to us and show us. But unfortunately, we do have a motion to deny. I'll take a second.
I'll second the motion.
I'm sorry.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion to deny is approved.
It's like a
Case, I have to say that.
it's like a party for a car.
Yeah, I don't know
It was
why.
standard than Ed.
Throw a party for your car. Just have to break the tent down after the party.
Oh, Ed, standard than Ed.
Yes.
Oh, it's a 10.
It's like a house made out of canvas.
It's a canvas garage. It's a 10 by 20 structure.
Insane.
Okay, so let's move on. We have an addition to the old business C, Savatsia, 16071 Northeast 9th Court. We looked at this the last time. So this is the thing down the middle of the yard, correct?
Or the back, the fence in the back.
So the reason it was denied is because a fence cannot be climbable. Okay, our code is very, very clear. You cannot climb and it looks like a ladder. Okay, but I think our board, because of the fact that the yard is enclosed all on all sides and with a fence, correct? This is just dividing the yard because you have a duplex. Okay. So. So does anybody else like this decorative screen?
I recall exactly what, so, but the thing is, this came before is because code compliance flagged this, correct?
Yes. Well, it was built without a permit.
Understood, and they called it a fence. Because if it was a flower trellis in her backyard, she's entitled to do that, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's. but there's a fence that goes around the perimeter.
A fence around the edge, which is fine, but then she added a fence.
It's not
Dividing.
dividing any,
Parts of her own property. It's not actually creating a perimeter divider, just backyard for one tenant, backyard. Within her property, but it's a fence, doesn't need. fence.
but if it was looked at as a.
But if we
decorative
called it
screen,
something else, yes.
it falls under a decorative screen that divides the property into two. I think we have a little latitude on this.
Yeah, I would support that. I mean, when we always speak of fences, we speak of them as the perimeter, and this is on her own private property. So it could be a decorative screen. That makes sense.
Flower trellis.
Yeah,
I asked about code because I guess we're granting the permit.
And we're making a judgment that it's a decorative screen to divide the two parts of the property. So we're gonna change the permit to for a decorative screen that divides and it's 3 foot high, right? Okay. So, is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
yes.
Can I get a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve a decorative screen.
Any two, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Your decorative screen was approved.
Can we ask we weren't sure last time what the material was either. What, like the horizontal bars? It's
All
wood. It's all wood. Is it safe if someone stands on it I mean, is it sturdy if someone were to stand on it? Child or something? Those rungs, they're very long and thin for wood. I'd imagine they would just. Okay.
All right. So thank you. All right. Have a great night. Thanks for working with us. Okay, so we have the rest of the agenda, but we have Alex David here. Do you want to begin your presentation? Do you want to wait? Give him some time? Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up our agenda. There's a second gentleman that's gonna be joining us via Zoom. So we'll just give him a few minutes. I have minutes from October 4th, 2021. So just one of the things on our agenda, I did speak to the attorney regarding Ortiz and the lot separation. So we are allowed to approve it with conditions of, like, you must have the new plans approved and designed. Everything must be done prior to the lot separation.
Right.
So we are allowed to do that, and we also are allowed to set a time frame if we'd like on our decision. So we wanted to say you have a year to begin, or 6 months to begin, or something like that, or get to your plans. We're allowed to make that too. So I'm going to ask that.
So first step is that he presents a new design,
Yes.
gets that approved. Second step is, or concurrently, with
Yeah.
approval of a new design, he can request demolition.
So, SB, can you put Ortiz back on the agenda for the next meeting? Yeah, for old business, because we can discuss it as a board. We can make a decision what we want to do and how we want to approve it. But we are allowed to approve with conditions. So just a update on that. I'll take a motion whenever anybody's ready.
This is a motion for the minutes?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
Favor say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. All right, next will be Building A Feldman, 450 Northeast 121st Street, re-roof tile. tile Saxony 900 slate, color dark charcoal blend. Doing the entire roof, it looks like, but not the flat, maybe. Looks like they're only applying for the pitched roof. Charcoal. Anybody has any questions? If not, I'll take a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Other than Scarlett, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next will be Building C, Schindler, 1008 Northeast 115th Street for a fence. It's all 6 linear feet of 6-foot high white grid PVC fence with 1 5-foot gate and 1 12-foot.
Yeah, I think it's just
On the front.
just on the sides. Yeah. Kind of, front facing on the sides.
Okay, looks good.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Scarlett. Favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Next will be Building D, Bowers, 11600 Northeast 9th Northeast 10th Avenue for windows. Rear with white frames, pictures. They look good. Horizontal rollers, casements, horizontal rollers, casements. Nice diagram. Questions? If not, I'll take a motion. Manny,
Second.
Ed, say aye. Aye. Okay, next will be Eagle Colette Investments, 11841 Northeast 12th Court. New concrete driveway, 4-inch thick on each entrance.
Duplex on a corner, it looks like. The only question I have is there's some concrete, old strip driveways that it's not clear if they're planning to remove those as well.
Is that, oh, you mean the ribbons?
Yeah, I've got the ribbons on the right-hand side and then some kind of slab, looks like another driveway on the left-hand side.
Yeah. I mean, even if they decide to keep them and they're still within their 40%, it's a corner lot, so they have like
Yeah.
a huge amount of space to be considered 40%. I mean, this house is only set back 12 feet from the property line. This is so non-conforming. So they're only getting 12 feet of parking car up on the 12 feet. That's the only room they have, really. Actually, no, it's set back a little further because of the porches, so it's 17 feet, 18 feet. that okay, Ed, or do you have any, concerns about that?
What could, I mean, but it looks like on the, maybe is it the right side of the house? There's some other concrete strips. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
that's
figure.
what I was saying. I'd like to know that they're removing those and replacing with a new driveway, not leaving those, adding a driveway. On the left-hand side too, there's a concrete pad that looks like a driveway as well.
Yeah. I mean, I almost question whether the, I don't know where the
Should we
appropriate,
even have a driveway here? or not?
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking is,
I mean, they do have room to put it over on the right where the concrete strips are at. I mean, it's only 12 feet, so it's, car is gonna be like three-quarters or 2/3 of the way onto the property line, onto the property.
yeah. What, so is it 18 feet wide? So they're thinking they're gonna put 4 cars in the front of the house? Is that the idea?
Well, and also it is kind of like a curved drive, it's a circular driveway because they can technically make and turn and go across if they want.
Oh, they could, right, I see. They could, a car,
12 feet, that's enough room for a car.
I mean, I just wonder how many cars are gonna actually end up being in front of this duplex at this point. Is it, we're gonna have a house with
And actually.
6 cars in front of it?
Spoken, is that, I think it's actually just a house.
Has anybody pulled this up online?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now and I think it's just, maybe just a single family.
Well, if it's a single family, I feel better about it.
No, I take it back. It's a duplex. There are 2 front doors. There's one here and then there's one you kind of hard to see behind that tree, but. But we do have a ribbon parking there and another spot here. So. I'm sure
So
it's
it's a
an
much better
improvement. Yeah, but I would like to just confirm that they're.
Can only go up.
Yeah, or give the approval, subject to removing the other parking, the ribbons and the pad on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I
At
would,
that point,
I would support that.
it's an improvement to the property, right?
So then what? Then the car basically is like pulled up right to the front door, right?
I mean, if you look at the picture, it actually looks like it has more room for the cars.
Yeah.
And it's 18, so they could put 2 cars side by side.
So yeah, so we could do that. I mean,
They're essentially parking in the right of way, but.
does it,
I don't think there's a lot of pedestrian traffic that it's gonna be impeding.
right? No, I mean, do we care that it's 18 feet wide? I mean, that seems like a awfully wide. Like, I guess if we're talking about this as a semicircular driveway that's up to the house, which is common and fine, is 18 feet.
But look at the size of their right of way. I mean, it's huge.
And it's,
If it's
22
40% of
feet
their
on the
right of way, I mean, that 18, 20, that's 30, 40 feet. On a right of way that is. Wow.
Like one side is what, 22 and the other side's 18? Am I reading that right?
yeah, I'm not sure why that
It's
is.
171 feet long, the right of way on that one side. And the other one is 104 feet. So, I mean, they're definitely below. I mean, it's just nice that we're gonna have 2 parking surfaces with the cars parked on it. I mean, I'm in agreement with the removal of the ribbons and the other one.
Yeah.
If that's what we want to suggest. I mean, you look at their lot coverage, they're 25 and 33%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it with the subject to
Yeah.
the caveats that we outlined for the removal of the other parking
Aye.
ribbons.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna approve it pending the removal of the ribbons and the other slab that's closer to the corner.
Yeah, the other areas that could be construed as parking areas.
I have a motion by Ed, a second by Sander. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. If they have a problem with it, then they need to come back to the next meeting. If they don't want to, if they're not in agreement with that. No, Ed and Sander. Last one, Hernandez, 11990 Northeast 7th Avenue. Let's finish this up. For a wood fence. 6-foot high fence with 8-foot gates, swings inward. And it's behind the house. From one corner all the way around to the other corner. I don't see the type of fence, but I mean, that actually is kind of critical. because It's horizontal, we need to know what about the horizontal? Does anybody
Yeah.
see any notes about what type of fence?
It has a standard wood fence detail on the package.
But it doesn't tell us what type it is though. Huh? Yeah, but is it a horizontal? Is it board on board? Is it shadow box? There's a fence detail, but it doesn't, it's just the cross section
Yeah.
detail. This one. One that has a circle it usually.
Well, the one has been updated.
Yeah, right. Or something.
I mean, just based on that section, it's, a 4x4 post with 3 horizontal members and then vertical pickets for the wood.
Horizontal for the other.
Yeah, I'm just saying, based on that section, it would have to be vertical.
Yeah.
No other
But I
way it
just
would
feel that
be attached.
the other one was, the other way was a little clearer, so we at least had an idea what we're voting on. I agree, I think it is vertical, so I think we're fine, but just, more details usually better. Any other comments on the board?
No, I mean, it's tucked back quite a bit, so seems modest enclosure. I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, so next on our discussion is going to be, we're going to jump down to, hold on. Oh, lay the land development code. Have a packet here. And we have Alex joining us. And
Gianno Fioli is on. He's going to be running the PowerPoint presentation.
he's going to be doing it?
Gianno.
Oh, Gianno is? Okay.
Yep. Gianno, you there?
You're both
Good
with
evening.
Calvin-
Yes, I'm
both with
going to be
Calvin
sharing the
Giuliano, right?
presentation.
Great, thank you.
You're both with Calvin Giuliano,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
So. Okay, so this is regards to the McMansion ordinance. They are coming in before us to get some direction from us and to do a proposal, to do a little presentation. We're not voting on this, we're just gonna give them some feedback as they request. And then they're gonna continue on working on the ordinance, and will come back to us again. I'll leave it up to Gianno. I think he's doing the presentation.
No, actually, Alex is gonna start
Alex
and
is gonna
then
do
you
it.
just
Okay.
let him know.
Oh, that's right. He's doing the landscaping. You're doing the,
Yes.
excuse me. Alex is doing the building. Giano's gonna do the landscaping. Excuse me. Sorry. Good evening. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, board members. I'm Alex David with Calvin
Is-
Giordano.
Is that on? You can.
Okay. Again, I'm Alex David with Calvin Giordano with offices at 10800 Biscayne Boulevard. So I'm basically right down the street. It was an easy commute for me this evening, so that was enjoyable. Joining me this evening is Gianno Fiole. He is our Director of Landscape Urbanism for the firm, and he's based in the Fort Lauderdale office. And I am the Director of Planning for the Miami-Dade office. Next slide, please. So we've just, it's just a very simple presentation, but we've broken it up into 3 parts. Our introduction, my discussion will be dealing with the buildings, the 2-story issue that you all are having, and then Gianno's going to take it over and deal and discuss the landscape ordinance, maybe some proposed changes. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a little bit about our firm. We're actually over 390 employees now, but we've been in South Florida a very, very long time. Next slide, please. So you see me, that's Gianno. Next slide, please. Okay, so why we are here? The initial discussion was brought up by the former Vice Mayor, now Commissioner Kennedy. He had concerns about certain things that were not in the landscape, in the land development code, dealing with building massing and heights, and also some landscape issues. So that's kind of why we are here. We were hired to, further vet what he had begun and get ideas for maybe potential changes to your code. So the issue is, as we understood it, there were concerns about new homes coming in or large additions to existing homes that, maybe need a little bit more direction with respect to your land development code regulations. So it's a little clearer. And again, you are seeing new development, construction coming in, additions, renovations. So that's kind of why we're here. So tonight, what I just wanted to, I have, obviously the binder, you have the binder before you, but it's just for your informational purposes. You're not making decisions tonight. I'll be back, but I just need to get the conversation started and have you all think about the direction that you believe the village should go in with respect to any changes in your code. So when the next step after we vet everything and get it going, we would take your code and make proposed changes to the code, strike through and underlines, as we call them, to show you the exact language changes that would be, if adopted by the commission, be put in your code. So we also noticed that there are some definitions that really should be added to your definition section of the code to clarify certain issues. So that's one other part. And then the ultimate effect is your code changes. Your code will have changes to it to reflect the vision of the community. Next slide. Here we go. So the next couple of slides are just graphics of how other municipalities have their codes set up dealing with 2-story residential homes. So again, these are just, a few samples. There's no right or wrong way. The codes are for the individual communities, and that's how we would approach anything in the village of Biscayne Park. So there's, like I said, there's no right or wrong. It's just what you all believe fits best in the community. So again, we threw in the Golden Beach, their code, they actually require a setback of a one for 1 foot basis. Anything over 18 feet triggers a required setback on the second floor, and that setback applies to 2/3 of the structure. Other communities, Key West, it's all just basically taken out of their codes. I'm not going to read everything, but again, this is for your information. Key West does it a bit differently.
Is that the next slide?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The next slide, Giano. So this is in your packet too. So I'm just calling out how different municipalities, deal with a 2-story residential. So that's the Key West code. Next slide, please. Another example is South Miami. And again, all these, the Golden Beach, South Miami, and a couple others are in your documents in your packet. They're 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there are examples of actually code citations from the municipal codes for you to look at. So South Miami has a rather complex way of looking at heights and lot coverages. So I wanted to use that example. Again, next slide, please. This is Miami Beach. And they look at it a different way. They have, setbacks on the second floor also for new buildings. Next slide, please.
So let me just so that we differentiate. The Golden Beach is basically, it's 1 story, then a setback with a second story with,
Over
And then-
18. right?
yeah, and then, which is like, it's called out feet wise.
Yes.
Key West, it seems like it's a percentage of the second floor.
Percentage.
South Miami, again, sounds like it's a set number for the first floor, second number for the second story.
Right.
And then now you're on to Miami Beach, and they are, what is their, how do they do it?
The 2-story elevations that run parallel to the side property line may not exceed a certain percent of the lot depth without incorporating open space. Yeah, I know. That's why there's no graphic. So like, these are the good and the bad, not bad, I shouldn't say that. There's, better examples that may work better here. As I said, South Miami, look at their setbacks and their lot coverage. It's very complicated. So, I would recommend not going that direction, but it's in there for your review.
Okay.
The code citation. Then lastly, Indian Creek Village, obviously the properties are larger, setbacks are bigger, but they are less prescriptive. So they're just saying, come in, show us a design, and we will, review it. So there's no, again, must setback 5 feet on the second floor or a percentage, it's a little looser.
But they do require a setback, it's just you can't extrude 2 floors in the same plane.
Right,
So
they don't,
it'd be a
right.
2-foot
that's-
setback or 6-foot, that's a discretionary thing.
Right,
but-
it's discretion of, and I'm actually the planner for the village, so I wrote this code, and that's the way, it was developed. They wanted some flexibility in design, okay, with the homeowners. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are just 4 definitions that I believe, these are by no means the correct definitions I'm recommending to put in the code, in your code, but these are just some examples of a few things that I think we need in the code. We don't discuss height. There's no definition of height. Your height is 2 stories. That's it. Doesn't say anything else. So we really, I believe, we need a height definition. You do have lot coverage percentage in the code of 50%, but what does that include? I don't know. So we really need to describe what, what is part of your lot coverage. So that's why I think we need to have a definition of lot coverage, so we know exactly what that covers. Buildings, pools, decks, driveways, if they're asphalt or concrete, those kinds of things. Again, open space is another definition that I think we could potentially use. And then just grade. What is the grade of a property, and where do you establish the height from? So these are just 4 definitions. There are others, but I just wanted to give you examples of.
Your
Yeah.
definition of grade here seems to depend on being relative to a building that's already there. But then you're using it to measure your height, right? So if someone comes in with new construction, what's the grade for them? They've eliminated the building that existed. So
Right.
it would be the established
So-
grade at that point.
Right, some building heights are measured from the crown of the road, or, flood, or grade. This is actually Cutler Bay, the definition of grade. And
So what I was thinking just is let him run through it and then we'll go back and make comments on each thing. If we could.
Okay, so, yeah, so these are, again, just a few, I think, definitions that we'll need to look at. Next slide, please. So, as I touched on this briefly before, height. We know it's 2 stories, but is it 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet? So I think the height in the table, the height needs to be clarified. Whatever number, you all determine is best for the community, great, but let's put a number in there. Is it 25 or 30 or 35 feet? So, and then we also have to think about, is that the maximum, or if someone has a chimney or a parapet or some other architectural feature, can it exceed that limitation? So these are just 2 little things to think about with respect to height. Bulk, it's another thing, because the concern in a lot of municipalities, not just here, but in others, people are building these very modern cubist house. They're just straight up walls on all sides. It's basically, it is a cube. So how do you want to address that architecturally or by design? So there are a couple ways. If you do not want that look, you could put some things in your code, and there's no right or wrong percentage, but second floor could be no more than a certain percent of the first floor. So write that right there. If you say the second floor could only be 75% of the first floor square footage, well, then you have to limit it somehow, and you get away from these vertical walls going up, fairly high, 2 stories or so. Or also another thought is, again, a second floor has to be set back a certain amount from the wall of the first floor, side walls. So there are a couple ways to approach that. Part of the Vice Mayor's presentation dealt with building orientation, and so there's really no change there, because the front of the house should remain the front of the house and be facing the street, not a side. And the other item that I looked at was your setbacks. Are you happy with the current setbacks, or not? Truthfully, the village does have a small rear setback compared to other municipalities. Some are 15 or 25, or if they're larger lots, they're even larger, or bigger than that. But you do have a small rear setback for single family. Okay, so next slide, please.
You want to finish all these with the balconies?
Oh,
Or
I'm
jump over
sorry.
the balcony
I
part?
missed. Oh, okay, yeah. So, and in some cities, in some municipalities, they address side setbacks, not really rear or yards, front or rear setbacks, just because there's more land in those areas, but on the sides, that's where the problem is. So what we're discussing tonight, is it just for the side setbacks, the side yard setbacks, or were you thinking of looking at it a little more holistically for all sides of all facades of a building. And also things like balconies, can they go into the setback a bit or not? So these are things that we would like to, just like I said, discuss, and write the code, any proposed code changes accordingly based on our discussion. Okay, next slide, please. So we're just going to go through, what I'm going to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. These couple, I have some slides just showing, what we're talking about. So the first slide, you may know where this is. It's at the corner of 10th Avenue and 96th Street, but I go by it all the time, but I never realized that the eastern wall of the house, everything else is very well articulated. A lot of movement in the other facades, but when you look at the east side of the house, you have one window. So it doesn't look like the rest of the house. So that's, I just wanted to show up. So this is what we're getting at with the photo on the right. We're trying to get away from it, I guess. Next slide, please. So these are new builds. These are both in Belmead. Yeah, the one on the left,
It's an apartment building.
quite interesting.
That's not a single family home.
It's a single family home.
It is?
So
Or Belmead. Belmead is
it's,
like-
yeah,
such a
it's
small
actually, it's brick, it's like, yeah. So anyway, so it has articulation. It's not a straight wall, but it's interesting. And then the one on the right,
That, there's an image on the right.
that's another house, but look at the front facade. This is the front of the house. And look how, there's a garage there, but it's just like blank wall.
You're sure that image on the left is a single family?
It
home?
is. I was there on Saturday. I took the picture myself.
What is it? What does that look like? A street, a parking lot or something in front of it? Or what is it?
Well, it's just the actual, you see the gray on the right? It's kind of weird. The gray, the second floor gray portion on the right, that's actually cantilevered out. There's a little driveway underneath that. That's like 77th or 78th Street, whatever that street is. That's on.
Look like a
Is
parking.
that on the main street when you come into Belmead?
No, it's either one block or 2 blocks north. So that's 76. So it's either 77th or 78th and maybe 8th Avenue or something like that. Northeast 8th. So,
That area floods a lot.
well, but that's
Used
why
to.
it's high. And it's an odd one car drive, and there's like a drop. So if you're not careful, your car could go off the side. It's kind of odd.
Okay.
But anyway, so then the house on the right, there's no articulation on the ground floor. It's just blank walls in the garage. So, these are all things we would, think about. Next slide, please. So these are just more examples. Like I'm saying, the house on the left is in Miami Beach. It's a new build. The house on the right is an older home in Miami Beach, but you could see the older house, and this is what I really wanted to point out. There is some movement on the second floor there. There's a jog out on the second floor. So it's not the straight, 2-story long wall. So there's some, breakup on there. So these are just giving you ideas of how houses are designed. Next slide, please. So the house on the left has, nice design. You can see that there's movement, the roof lines are different. There's no blank wall, or neither, none of the sides have blank walls. So that's, just one style. So the one on the right is, I don't know if this is a garage or, this is an entrance to a home. The door's on the left.
What's that at?
But this is something you probably don't want. I'm sorry?
Where is it? Located?
104th, 10, it's by the golf course, the dead end, the dead end street on 104th,
Okay.
west of the boulevard
Yeah.
on the canal side. And the golf course is just to the left of
So it's in the shores.
It's in the shores, yeah. So, I mean, these are just design features that, as I said, I wanted to point out. And, you know, you guys you've done a good job in this, the new build, so, you know, I'm not worried about it here, but this is what's been permitted in other places. So now we're gonna get into the next slide, which is a little bit of the ugly. So just wanted to show you how, you know, these blank walls, very limited windows, you know, right next to each other. It just, you know, I don't think that's the look that you would really want. And the same thing with the one on the right. Again, it's just basically a blank wall with a door on the first floor. So again, there's no, just a wall. So it's dead space on the side. So.
We couldn't do that now with our current code, right?
Yeah, those are like 5 feet.
Right, well, that's City of Miami. These are City of Miami. Well, the one on the left is City of Miami. The one on the right is the beach. But
It's
yeah,
definitely not what we.
well,
want.
I know, this is why, this is the ugly part, you know, like, this is a 5-foot setback. And I'm going to wrap up the photos with the next slide, please. So this is something you had approved, and again, you know, the design, I mean, it's a larger house, but, you know, there's movement in the house. It's not just blank, you know, straight up walls to second floor. There's really a lot of movement in the structure. And so, you know, I applaud you for, you know, working on this project. Next slide. So the word of the day, as I'm calling it, is articulation, which basically means breaking up the facade, the side of buildings, so it's more interesting, more human scale. Yeah, it's just not your straight wall. That's basically what this is. Next slide, please. So there are two approaches to any code: being very prescriptive, laying it out foot by foot in a very methodical, or the other way is not prescriptive, which is the Indian Creek Village code citation. It's a little more loose, leaves more imagination to the architects, but discourages these big blank walls or big, you know, tall, very tall walls with no relief.
Hold on. That's not prescriptive or prescriptive?
Prescriptive is very
Exact.
exact.
Boom, 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 boom.
Right. So look at the South Miami lot coverage code. That's very prescriptive.
Yeah.
It's a whole table just with lot coverage.
Yeah.
So, and then the looser one is the not prescriptive, which. Next slide. So this is my last slide, but you know, we could, these are the 4 ways we could handle this. If you believe there's nothing to do, then we don't touch the code. Or the minor tweaks, which is changing, you know, a few definitions, putting in definitions, the major overhaul of the code, or replace it all. So those are just the 4 scenarios that we could, you know, look into with, you know, your direction. So with that, I'll end my presentation and answer any questions. But again, I'll be back. This is just for, you know, informational purposes today to start, you know, thinking about, you know,
Can we give you some feedback on this and some direction?
it's whatever you want.
Okay,
If you
so
want
I
to give me
think since-
feedback or think about it and let me know. It's like I said, it's just, I want to keep it open and I'll answer any questions tonight, but you know, you can always reach out to email me if you have any other questions or comments,
Okay.
and then I could start putting this together. But this is just, like I said, the initial conversation.
I think we should email you as a group and not as individuals.
That's fine.
I think we should, if you guys are up for it, before we start the next phase, the landscape part, let's just run through this and give a little like feedback on what they thought. First off, just this was brought up by the P and Z too, not just
Okay.
Commissioner Kennedy. One thing I was review proposed changes to land development code for single-family dwellings. Well, we also have two-family dwellings in the park,
Right.
which we're gonna be discussing later in
Right.
this meeting. But you call out specifically single-family dwellings, but we do
Yeah,
have.
that was our charge to deal with the McMansion issue,
Yeah.
so that's why, but I could assist in that too.
And then have you seen the language that we sent up as a board? Okay, so we need to get the language to you, because we've actually discussed this as a board, and we did make a number of recommendations to the commission, to Commissioner Kennedy, of what our suggestions are, because obviously we are dealing with this. We know we're on the front lines here. We know what's
I
coming
know,
to our park.
exactly. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. And so we have an idea of where we want to go. And we've already come up with some language, which I can forward to you.
Perfect.
It's kind of a combination of like the Beach. Hold on, is that Golden Beach? Even South Miami, I know it's very complicated. There is still some stuff in there that if you got rid of a lot of it, it was not so bad. I'm gonna run through. Everybody agree with on that? Or I mean, we're all, I don't know if we want to take individual comments, or should we discuss? Like, I think we want to be a little more descriptive, but maybe not completely to the point where we have no judgment in what is being decided.
Right.
That last house that you showed, that's an example of us working with a resident to kind of place things and say, it gives us a little flexibility.
Right.
Definitely, we should be looking at a maximum height. We usually kind of fall back on the county a little bit.
Right. 35 feet.
Yeah. But do we want to stay at 35? Do we want to lower it, increase it? I would kind of leave that up to suggestions. Lot coverage. When we calculate lot coverage, it's everything that's on the lot that's impervious, like walkways, driveways, pools,
Right.
all that stuff. So the definitions are great, open space. The grade, like Ed said, that's something that we've been kind of like, do we start like from floodplain? Do we start from the crest of the street? We definitely think that there needs to be a set number that we can reference back to. Because, right now we have people coming in and they want to do a 20-foot house, and then we're looking at like, where are they starting from?
Right.
You
I
know,
mean,
is
I totally agree. That's why that's in there, because, every city does it differently and it's problematic.
Yeah.
If it's not called out properly.
The height piece that we have, I mean, I think that your suggestion is great. Our language that we've approved was setting the second story back from the first story. So like creating the step back effect.
From the front facade or from?
All around, on all
Okay.
sides, all the setbacks. But I do, like the idea of what they did in Indian Creek, there's some validity to that, where, about the bulking and the vertical walls. But again, we don't have 100-foot, their lots are much bigger, or 25-foot setbacks, I should say.
Right. I mean, the lots are 200 feet wide. The
Yeah.
larger lots, 200 by 400. So,
Um,
they're substantial.
So regarding setbacks, I don't think anybody's ever discussed changing our setbacks, except, you did bring up the rear yard. The problem is that we have a lot of corner lots that only have 10 feet. So we'd have to totally like figure out, how do we define, the code right now, it's uniform for everybody's 10 feet, but
Right.
there's some yards that don't even have anything more than 10 feet. Balconies, that's something that, the 10-foot setback is kind of, the only thing that we've ever allowed is just the roof overhang. So that's something that we, and then obviously, our intent is to stop those sheer walls that you
Right.
showed us in Miami Shores, that cube in in Miami on,
Right.
not El Cid,
Tell me,
Almeid. That's, we're definitely don't want that. Plus, things like these, we have the term harmonious in our code, and it's a
Right.
very, very important tool that we have, that we can say, hey, this is not Biscayne Park.
Right.
So, that's something that hopefully, that would hold up and deter things like that. the articulation thing is great and prescriptive, non-prescriptive. It's almost like they need to find something in the middle, you know?
Well, but you don't want to, whatever, like, write a code that gets you out of business.
Yeah.
Reviewing it, you know, so yeah, there's, I should have put that in the side. The third option is in the middle or something, but yeah.
And then again, I think that we do definitely need to do something. You know, so is that between minor and major tweaks? I don't think it has to be replaced. I don't think what we have is junk. It's just, it needs to be tightened because
Right.
right now, you know, this was designed back when people were building 2-bedroom houses and stuff.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'll open it to Manny if you want to make some comments. We'll just run down any really quick. Or whenever, however long we want to take.
Yeah, there is it's a great presentation and thank you for giving this, because myself, I've been thinking on what I have seen being built.
Right.
In the village, and and it gets me upset because that's no the village. The village, we want to conserve what the village has been.
Right.
So this is giving a great ideas, and I'm gonna be reviewing, and I will make some comments, and also I would like to get a copy of that, the original language
What we-
and all that, so I
our
can be
suggestions.
more up to.
Yeah, yeah,
up
yeah.
to
I'd love to see it
speed.
too, and that's gonna be a big help, you know?
Yes, no, because it's great, no, and thank you again, but I'll be reviewing this and take my time
Yep.
and
Take your
make
time and
more comments there.
the village knows where to get a hold of me, so.
Sandra, do you have any comments?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I think, our chair brought up a good point about like that, the side of the house with no windows on it. We do have the discretion on this board to have an opinion about that. The thing that I noticed though was in a lot of the communities that you referenced in your presentation was that they're so different than our community. Like you're talking about Golden Beach or Key West or Indian Creek. I mean, there's nothing really resembles Biscayne Park in that. And so I was curious if you purposely, didn't look at like Miami Shores, El Portal,
Did not look at Miami Shores.
you know.
They're more complicated.
Okay. Well, I don't know what theirs is, but I'm just saying they do have a pretty good concentration of historic homes, and there's a real desire for, I've seen the way that they have, I think that they have what I feel is coming to be a very nice mix of when I drive through that community 50 years from now, I'll understand that this house was built in this era, this house was built in this era, and there's a nice, kind of menagerie of architecture. And I think that can be pleasing. So I guess, whether it's, Morningside, Shorecrest, you mentioned Miami Beach, but just the communities that I think, be interesting to look at more for me would be looking at those communities versus, even South Miami is, pretty different than Biscayne Park. So I just would maybe think that we would look there.
I would think that they are probably in the same position that the village is in, that, including the shores, frankly, that they're looking at their codes because they're playing catch up on what's happening in their neighborhoods.
So, Miami Beach could be a good one. Mid Beach, there's homes and there's kind of a community there in Mid Beach on Sheridan and everything north of 41st Street. That could be a comparable community.
But isn't South Miami very similar to us as far as the size? But they have commercial, obviously.
Yeah, it's.
It's like here, yeah.
I think what's probably relevant is looking at, even zooming out even further and looking at the vintage of the platting and understanding the, the sizes of the lots. Because I think that's what drives it. Everything kind of drives for lot size at that point. And so if it's an area where you have just larger size lots versus smaller size lots, then I think then you can kind of zone appropriately. I'm getting to your slide on height. Something that I feel very strongly about, and I'm sure you do too, is how we measure height in a way that does not look the other way to the issues of flood and elevation and home insurance. And that is a recently changed. Flood maps have been updated. It's going to change again. They're not adopted right. But the issue is that when we all start having to pay actuarial rates for flood insurance, there's going to be a reckoning. And I'm very concerned that that we allow new homes to be constructed in a manner that makes them that they can be insurable. And that may mean that they are different, significantly different in their base flood elevation than the existing historic homes. And that may be a shock to people in the community. But we, as a board, have a responsibility to think about where we're going to be in 100 years from now. And it is, it's a well-known fact. I'm sure you've studied it. I mean, FEMA's bankrupt, or at least in the red. And there's a huge issue for our government, which subsidizes flood insurance for all of us. Do you think the mic is picking you up? Because this is an important discussion. Okay,
Yeah, sorry. After Andrew, when Key Biscayne was being redeveloped, they were, knocking down the old houses, the old Mackle homes, building new. Well, the flood criteria changed. So county said, okay, all that new houses are up, I don't know, whatever, how many feet, 3 or 4 more feet. Okay, so you had the Mackle homes down here and then the new homes up here. And where did the water go? From here down to the houses.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that I call it the Key Biscayne effect. So it was a major issue way back when, 30 years ago in the 90s. And so the county had to go back in and reevaluate certain things dealing with the code. So, I'm sensitive to what you're talking about, but I have to, you have to be careful about the drainage that goes into other issues.
Look, the future of Biscayne Park is septic tanks go away.
Mhm.
We get on a sewage system because all the septic tanks are going to be coming through our front lawns at some point. And there will be pump stations and we will have stormwater management systems put in place. That is the only way that we are going to survive in Biscayne Park. Now that's a much bigger conversation,
Right.
But it is something that's going to happen. And so when that does happen, and if that's 50 years or 75 years from now, whatever it is, but when you're building a community, a village, you have to think about it in terms of centuries, not in terms of decades. All the houses, whether they get raised up or, whatever we do. I mean, raising a house is not a foreign concept. I was just in New Orleans and was watching them do it. And I've on Miami Beach, we had a whole charrette dealing with it specifically about how to deal with what it costs to raise a single family home. So
What does that cost? I'm curious.
it's if I remember correctly, for it was for like a 3,500 square foot, 1-story home. It was like 400,000 or 350,000. So it's a lot,
It's a chunk of change.
but property values are going up here. And while it's not affordable, maybe the technology of raising homes becomes better. Maybe there are subsidies that are provided by the government to help homeowners with that, with secondary loans that stand behind mortgages with, extremely low interest rates, whatever it's going to be. There's going to be solutions at lots of different levels, planning, government, whatever it might be. But stormwater management is on the horizon. The other thing I wanted to just point out was on lot coverage. I think that the way we currently do it, where decks are considered pervious, I think makes sense. We'd like to, I think, keep that because it's something that works well for us with our code. That's my opinion. And then the other thing is that we see a lot of applications for pools coming in here on smaller lots. And I think it's great that people are putting pools in. It adds value to the home. It makes it a nicer place to live. I know that pools are impervious by the nature of their construction, but to me, they're kind of part of the landscape. And one of the things that I'd like to see us right now, they're just governed by accessory structure code. I'd like to see us maybe think about pools being more of a landscape element than the same code that governs you to build an addition on your house. I think that's an opportunity for us. The next slide you have about height, I just 25, 30, 35 feet. I just said flood must be an issue that drives where we measure from.
Right, but that would be the beginning. I'll work on that.
Yeah,
That
and
is-
then, look, do you like the current setbacks? I think, my last note on this is this. I think that our setbacks are generally pretty good. I think our, 10-foot side setbacks are appropriate. Where I do think there's opportunity is that we have houses in the park, there are some nice historic homes and other homes that have less than the 30-foot front setback, and they still work and they still feel good, and they're on smaller lots, and it's okay. Now, do I think, on depending again on the lot size, could 20 feet be appropriate? And I also think about, we have streets where there's a 60-foot median of trees or a 40-foot median of trees. So now you've got this incredible green buffer with one-way roads. It's not a two-way street. If one of those homes had a 20-foot front setback and that allowed you to have, build those extra 1 or 2 bedrooms or whatever you wanted instead of a 30-foot setback, could that work well? I think it could. And again, so that's why I think you got to really zoom out and look at lot sizes when you think about setbacks,
Right.
and consider both on front and rear setbacks. If the lot sizes are on the smaller side, let's say less than 10,000 or 11,000 square feet, where it's a smaller size lot, is that appropriate? And how does that feel as a community? I think it could. I think side can stay static, but I think front and rear is something that should be a little bit more of a
Sliding scale or something for lot size.
yeah. And I think if you have a median, if it's a one-way street and there's a median, there's just, because the scale, mass, and character of Biscayne Park isn't that one house on that lot. It's
Right.
the environment where you're standing in. So those are my sentiments.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just quickly second Sandra's point about taking flood and future flood issues into consideration when establishing height and grade or whatever we're going to establish for the point of height. I do think it's going to be a difficult pill to swallow for people who are, this whole process started because they're trying to battle back on these 2-story McMansions. But the reality is that they may have to start considering allowing that first floor level to be at a higher elevation than we typically have. I'm sure you're familiar with freeboard policy in Miami Beach, where basically they allow you 5 feet above flood. Again, because they're just thinking about the long-term future of their
North Bay
community.
Village is
So
Another one that went that route.
yeah, I'm not sure that we want 5 feet above flood, but it's something to be considered, right? And I also second Sandra's point about maybe looking into front setbacks on some of these streets that have the large, kind of parkways in between, because it certainly should be something that is considered on their setback, which is unique on those particular streets. With that being said, just a general comment, I'm of the mind that I'd prefer a minor tweak and a small intervention and not a complicated code.
Right.
Because this is not
I
South
agree.
Miami, this is not Miami Beach.
Right.
This is a small community of
We agree.
1,100 homes
Agree on that.
of, varying degrees of architectural sophistication among homeowners. And I think if we make a complicated code, it's gonna be
Right.
difficult for homeowners, difficult for us, difficult for everyone involved. I don't think we need that here.
Right.
We're not that
I
big of a
mean, and
municipality, so
Right, I agree with you.
simple and minor tweaks is all we need. I know there is a concern with the development, but I don't see huge problems that we're facing. I think minor intervention. So
Okay.
that's my only.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, how are you today?
So I think that it was good that you brought up Key Biscayne because I'm pretty familiar with their code as well, and also what Sandra was saying about the future of Biscayne Park with the sewer getting onto sewer. They just went through that really recently, and they had they had the same issue we did back in years ago with the septic, but they went ahead and went forward with it, and they had all the residents tie up, and I think they're almost 100% compliant now. And additionally, they've got a really robust system for installing stormwater management systems. So I think that they're super good example of what we could look at for a lot of those really interesting issues. And so that's one thing, one comment. And maybe we could get, in addition to the other cities that you have in here for our next go, we could have some Key Biscayne information with how they're doing their setbacks. Because I know that they do also have the articulation, like the requirements of the second story setback. For the Golden Beach, to me, the first level at 18 feet kind of seems tall. But
It is.
I mean, I know what it looks like. I've driven through there and everything, but when you have these examples in here with the code, could we also maybe get pictures, one or two, so that we can kind of compare, like, because it seems like you have the pictures are from other places that we didn't get the
I wanted to mix
language.
I wanted to mix it up a bit.
Okay.
So, but I'll. do
But
what-
just one or two, just to kind of see what it looks like in out there in the field. But these are all really good examples. I just learned right now that we don't have a height limit in our code at 2 stories. That seems very strange. And then on the grade, the definition for the grade, I don't quite understand what the very last few words are. It says the finished surface on the ground adjacent to the exterior walls or of a building or a base to support a structure. I'm not quite sure what that's meaning.
That's actually out of Cutler Bay's code. So I'm not gonna say any more than that. So, yeah,
All right.
it doesn't make sense to me, but that's kind of why, I looked at it again. It just, again,
Okay,
there are no right or wrong
and
definitions. We need to come up with a definition that fits the village, and it's in your code.
I mean, in my opinion, being in, I think the entire village is in a flood zone. I'm not sure if there are any parts that are not, but I think using base flood elevation as a benchmark is the only reasonable thing to do to not penalize someone who we say it's, 12-foot max first floor from average grade or crown of road, but they have to elevate their house and now they end up with a, 7-foot ceiling or something ridiculous. That's probably not a actual scenario, but I think if you're in a flood zone, you need to use base
Right,
flood as
right.
either, that's where you can build, or you can build that plus 1 or 2 feet or whatever it is we determine. But I think using average grade or crown of road or things like that are not really appropriate.
then, so on the slide, we're talking about bulk, do we want a cube or articulated second floors? I think that we're of the opinion that we don't want cubes. So that there's a lot of, that's kind of where, where you're going with all this information too, I'm sure.
And our code does address that, right? We don't allow a single continuous roof plane already in the code. So it's not as if you could build a cube here. to begin with.
Okay. And then the other one on orientation, the next slide, front of house should face the street, no change. But that kind of, I'm kind of have a question about like, which street are you talking about? Or does that really matter? Because especially on a corner lot.
Right. I mean, it's generally, you don't want, if you have a regular lot, a 75-foot by 100-foot lot or something, you don't want the side of the house, to be facing the front. It's no longer a front,
Yeah,
It's just, we want,
but this says the street, not the front.
But we have in our code already, it says, like, it defines the street front of the, which I think it's the front door and the address or something like along those lines.
right.
Okay.
Typically, Dade County works, and this is typical. The narrowest, if it's on a corner, the narrowest side of your lot is the front. Historically, maybe the door's on the other side, you know, on another street, but typically that's how they look at those things. Narrowest side is the front of the house.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the location of the dwelling, setback requirements, should second floor be set back on all sides or just on the side yard setback? I would definitely say that include the front setback too, on the second floor. I think those are all my comments.
Scarlett. Yeah, I just had one follow-up on that because it came up a couple times. Has they ever been a thing where, you know, we have the base floodplain now and so could there be a base floodplain because the taken effect of you know, what's going to happen in the future? But is there a way of also saying, okay, you can have the base floodplain, but you also have a maximum height? So, you know, these houses, you know, so you don't have start there and you go up 40 feet. You could actually say crown of road is from 40 feet and then the maximum, you know,
Right.
I don't know. That's
Again, the problem with that is treating homeowners differently and saying, well, we're all in a flood zone that's, you know, AE7, but the crown of road on my particular street is a foot lower than the crown of road on yours. And so by virtue of that, you get a foot more height in your house than I do. That's the problem, right? So.
I mean, I've seen it measured so many ways and it's so confusing. I mean, one city that I deal with, it's the average elevation of the crown of the road. So it could go up and down on the street, but then you have to figure out the average. Others is just the crown of the road. Others are the grade. You know, like I said, there's so many different ways people measure grade. It's confusing.
There's only
Forced to have our first floor at a certain minimum. Democratic thing to do is say, whatever the height the zoning code determines, 25, 20, 30, it starts from.
Right. I mean, you don't want to.
the only thing that matters is flood.
Special.
But also, you know, the point you brought up about Key Biscayne, you know, not all the houses are going to eventually get torn down and be, so you're going to end up having these ranches next to this, you know, the built up and then on top of that. So there needs to be a consideration for that too.
Right.
So.
And then some houses in certain cities, they have retaining walls and then, you know, so the house is down here, the older house, and then there's a retaining wall and then a new house. I mean, just look.
All right, so I think we've given you our feedback and I'll go ahead and close that. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Like I said, any questions, ship them, you know, put them all together. You're gonna ship me the comments that
I
you
will.
already have, and that'll be a big help.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And now I'm going to.
And
turn
you're
it
going to
over
come back to us again
Yep.
when you have a
Yep.
little more put
Right,
together.
when I review
This is
everything.
a work in progress for all of
Yep.
us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Giano.
Yep.
And
Thank
this
you.
is now regarding the landscaping ordinance.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, we got a charge from your commission to look at any modifications that we can make to the zoning code that could help preserve the existing tree canopy that you already have throughout the village. And that's not with any, that's not without merit. I think it's really important to note that one of the things that really characterizes one of the richnesses that we find in the village is precisely the continuity of the existing tree canopy. And I do just want to run through some benefits of why that's really important before we get into the substance of the language that we want to discuss. So our sort of approach to this is to recognize that communities that invest in preserving their existing tree canopy can commandeer as much as $15,000 to $25,000 more on property values. And that's not only an impact on quality of life, that's also an impact on comfort and walkability for the community. We know that the village is proud to be a bird sanctuary. So when we look at the environmental benefits, it's not just about the habitat and shelter for the birds, but it also represents an impact on the heat island effect, which translates to lower cooling costs for residents, greater resiliency. The stronger your canopy is, the better your community can withstand stronger storms. And your existing tree canopy also serves a storm and runoff management component, where through evapotranspiration, they can help to deal with some of the amounts of water that are in your soils whenever you have deluges or really heavy rain events. So particularly when we look at lots that are roughly between 70 and 150 feet, large trees can sometimes be an impediment to large homes. So I think that we can definitely look at this idea of the tree preservation strategy and how that can complement efforts to force innovation in design, to break up massing of buildings as a way to salvage existing trees. So I'm going to go straight into some recommendations that I actually have proposed for your language. We still haven't gone through the legal review of this, but I definitely want to have an opportunity to have a conversation with you about these. But the most important one is to define the sort of critical components of what establishes the sort of spatial bubble of a tree that needs to be protected. And the first one of those is defining the tree drip line, because that's where we're going to use to measure the sort of root area of the tree that we don't want to impact. We also want to provide a tree modification definition where we're not only starting to go down a path of saying that we want to protect trees from being removed, but we also want to protect trees from being overly hacked or from substantial branches of trees to be impacted. So we've put in here that a tree modification includes pruning really large branches, 10 inches or thicker, cutting roots that could be critical roots to the survival and nutrient strategies of the trees, and also choking out the trees to a slow death by packing soil on them, which is something that particularly oak trees can be very sensitive to, which you have a lot of oak trees in your village. If you pack a bunch of soil on their critical roots, then they do not have the opportunity to get oxygen, and they will tend to go into a slow decline and eventual death. And typically that takes 3 up to 5 years. We also want to define specimen tree. And we're defining a specimen tree as anything with a DBH of 18 inches or more, not including any invasive or exotic species. We're excluding palms from the definition of a specimen tree. And we're excluding any trees that people plant in their yards for the growth of fruits or vegetables, unless that tree is 36 inches or greater. Once a tree reaches 36 inches or greater, then the tree becomes a specimen tree. And the reason why I want to suggest a definition for a specimen tree is because we're making a clear distinction between specimen trees and trees in the language that I'm proposing to you today. We're not looking to preserve trees, all trees. We're only looking to provide some language to salvage and protect your larger trees, which are going to be your specimen trees. I do think it's important for us to talk about Florida Statute 163 that was recently adopted. And I'm going to read that to you just so we can have some clarity for all the folks that are watching us on your YouTube channel. There are 2 provisions to that code, and that statute says that a local government may not require a notice, application, approval, permit, fee, or mitigation for the pruning, trimming, or removal of a tree on a residential property if the property owner obtains documentation from an arborist certified by the ISA or a landscape architect that the tree presents a danger to persons or property. So essentially, the state has given sort of a license to property owners to be able to eliminate trees if the trees are deemed danger to persons or property. The code also limits the local municipality, saying that you cannot require them to mitigate for the loss of that tree. Now, I think it's important to note that this is not a free-for-all, and it's not a blank license for property owners to go out there and start chopping down their trees. The way that Miami-Dade County looks at it in their tree section is that you still have to go through the process of documenting the tree and demonstrating that the tree is in fact considered a danger to persons or property. And then once you go through that process, then they will exempt you from having to get the tree permit. And I think it's important to sort of state that. So when we took that approach, we first looked at the code and the provisions that it has already in there for tree protections. In your section 8.2.4, where you talk specifically about tree protection, you make reference to that the property owner must get a permit from Miami-Dade County's RER. And what we're doing is that we're adding language in bullet D to say that removal of trees that have been deemed as a danger to persons or property, subject to provisions of section 16.10 of your code, are exempt from tree removal permits. So we're simply just baking in the Florida statute and acknowledging it in this code, and then dealing with it in section 1610 of your code. In 1610, right now, the way that the language is currently adopted, the language essentially forces the village to issue a tree permit, a tree permit to remove a tree if the county issues a tree removal permit. And what we're suggesting is that we expand the scope of the village to not only issue a tree removal permit, but to also issue a tree work permit for the pruning of large branches, for example. And then that permit now, based on the language that we're proposing, will require the previous approval from Miami-Dade County's RER of a tree removal permit. So we're asking that before they can tear down any trees in the village, that the owner has to go to Miami-Dade County and get a permit. But that permit needs to be proven to the village before the village issues its permit. And there are a few exceptions that we've put to that sort of caveat. So the first one of these bullet reads, notwithstanding the issuance of a tree removal permit by Miami-Dade County, a specimen tree that has been deemed as a danger to persons or property shall have been deemed as dangerous by no less than 3 independent arborists or landscape architects, or any combination thereof. Determination of what deems the specimen tree as dangerous shall be clearly stated and documented with photographs in a formal tree evaluation report, which needs to be signed and issued by each one of the professionals, and that needs to be approved by you as a board. So what we're suggesting here is that somebody cannot go and get a fly-by-night arborist or landscape architect, pay them a whole chunk of money, and have them provide a letter saying that a tree is a potential danger, which then gives them license to remove it. We're trying to create some checks and balances here by establishing that there's a minimum of 3 professionals that need to deem it as a danger. Then in that section, we're proposing that we add language to the code on what that approval procedure for the specimen tree modification, relocation, or removal be. That the first step of that is that there's an application review to you as a board, where you will render a decision on a ability of an applicant to relocate, remove, or modify a tree. And then upon Upon receipt of that application, then there is a series of things that will become the criteria that you will use to evaluate. Those include the size and configuration of the property, the size and configuration of any proposed development, the location of all existing and proposed trees relative to any existing and proposed development, whether or not the tree can be preserved under the proposed plan or any alternative plan, the health, condition, and aesthetic qualities of the tree, whether the tree possesses a threat to persons or property, and the location of utility systems. This gives you sort of parameters that then you can use to require specific types of information categorically from your applicant so that you can have all the information in front of you at the time that you need to make a determination. But in order to make a determination, we're going to ask the applicants to go through a series of steps in order to prove to you that if they do want to build a house and that the tree is in the way and they want to get rid of a tree that has been there for the better part of 80 years, then they need to prove to you that there's a hardship. And there's 4 steps to that process that they would have to go through. The first one is that they would have to demonstrate through reasonable efforts that they have tried to preserve the existing tree in its existing location. And we're giving you the power through the code to require them to provide design alternatives. The second step would be that they would have to modify the tree, which means cut back the tree, not get rid of the tree, but cut back the tree in order to be able to accommodate the development that they're looking to do. If that doesn't work, then they have to demonstrate their ability to relocate the tree so that you don't lose that natural resource, but you simply just shift it from one place on the site to another that can work well with the design that they have. And as a last recourse, then remove the tree, which at which point you can always deny and require them to come back with an alternate plan with suggestions or recommendations that you may make in order to be able to preserve that tree as much as possible. We have baked in their language saying that that the applicant bears the responsibility and the burden of proving the hardship, and that if the tree can be removed, then they have to mitigate for it based on tree mitigation requirements. And then those tree mitigation requirements are based on calculations of the removed tree. And we have a chart here that shows the number of trees that you would have to use to replace the removal of the existing specimen tree. And these numbers, we're still examining these numbers. These numbers are the same numbers that the city of Miami Beach uses. We had the pleasure of working on the urban forestry master plan for the city of Miami Beach. And one of the things that we learned in our research was that the more stringent and the more demanding the mitigation requirements were, the better opportunities that the city had in order to be able to preserve its tree canopy. So the idea here is to make it difficult but not prohibitive, in order to encourage them to have as much innovation in design and really consider the location and the quality and the character of the trees and the community's character in the design of the building. If they cannot fit all the mitigation trees on their site, they can always fit as many as they can, and then whatever they cannot fit, they can be planted in publicly owned land throughout the village, and that can be part of a reforestation strategy, particularly in some of your medians. As some of your trees mature and die off, you want to have good generational sort of backup so that new trees can grow into their space. And if that doesn't work, then there's a tree preservation fund that we will recommend the commission to adopt and to allocate where those funds are. And those funds would be precisely for trees and open space investments. We have some language in there that defines how the calculations are calculated, the quality of trees in order to be able to get good, structurally sound trees planted. We define what the Tree Preservation Trust Fund is, and we hold some accountability to say that, that all the tree replacement processes in a mitigation needs to be completed before they can get their certificate of occupancy. So that means that they cannot prorate that to after getting their CO. They have to do that in order to get the CO. It gives you a little bit of teeth in order to be able to hold their feet accountable. So what I did was I sort of created a flow chart. I know that it could be a little bit confusing. So the way that we envision it, and I'm going to annotate on the screen just so you can sort of see this process, is that as the applicant engages their design professional to design the tree, if it is a tree that they want to get rid of, then they will go straight to the Miami-Dade County RER as it stands today. If they get approved, then the village will issue the tree removal permit, and that's consistent with the status quo, that's consistent with the current standards. If it is a specimen tree, however, let's say it's a 48-inch or 60-inch oak, then the way that we wrote the language, it will require the applicant to come to you first in order to determine if you will be so inclined to approve the removal of that tree. If you are inclined to approve that removal, then they will go through the process of going through the Miami-Dade County RER process. If you do not approve it, then they have to go back through the redesign process and bring it back to you until you are so satisfied to the point that they can then kick into that other strategy. Once RER approves that, then the village issues its concurrent tree work permit. The applicant performs their construction activity, and then prior to issuance of the CO, then the village will confirm that any mitigation that needs to be done would have been completed. And that is what we have to propose to you this evening as a way of helping you preserve your existing tree canopy, and in doing so, help preserve the character of your village.
Okay, thank you, Gianna, for the presentation. Very thorough. Is this, these are some pretty specific recommendations that you're making?
Yes. This is actually I'm sorry, I think the microphone is not picking up your audio.
Oh, it turned off. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I must have hit the button.
there.
So,
Sorry.
I don't know how much you heard, but I was just saying if this is something that's getting ready to go forward, that's great. But I would recommend that if it was a new task that the planning board is now going to be taking on, because we haven't really done this in the past, that it be as precise as possible so that when we do consider it, we have almost like have a checklist of things that we have to look at and it's as clear as possible. My, I wanted to just find really quick, the determination of trees that are, I think, healthy or something. I was wondering if this is, I don't know how other villages or other municipalities do this. Do they have other boards that consider this, that might be more versed on trees than we would be? I'm just wondering if we wanted to maybe consider, and this is just throwing it out there, bringing in another one of our boards that would actually maybe have more knowledge of trees.
Well, let me make a couple of recommendations. I think that when you require a tree evaluation report, we can always add some additional language in there to make sure that the tree evaluation reports that are prepared by the arborists or the landscape architects includes some information specific to the trees, such as health, potential liability concerns, what the age of the tree is, what the environmental benefits are. Even we can have them even calculate the value of the tree, and we can also have them calculate what the carbon sequestrations is and all the different environmental benefits. That's something, for example, that the city of Miami Beach does. With regards to the board, you could very well require the advice of your parks and parkway board members, or you can do as other municipalities do, which is to ensure that you either have a landscape architect or arborist as a consultant to you as a board to help you review and provide comments, or you can have a landscape architect and arborist as a board member. So those are ways that you could do that. But I think, given the small size of the village, given the fact that it may be very, very difficult to find a arborist or landscape architect that lives in the village that's able to meet the requirements to sit on the board, putting the burden on the property owner to have their arborist provide you with a detailed report that then gives you the opportunity to make a recommendation or an evaluation, that might be the best course of action.
Okay. And I agree. I like the putting the onus on the applicant and making it that they have to come, we have an issue with on our roofing side where, in order to do a certain thing, all you have to do is get an engineer to say, okay, you can do this, or you can't do this, and everybody sells their license for $20 kind of thing.
Right.
We've dealt with that on numerous occasions. It's kind of one of our loophole. But so making this very, rigid and saying you need to have these certain, professionals prepare these documents and everything is a good thing. But again, I would just, when it comes to making judgments on trees, I would maybe I would want to almost like take into consideration of like the path and parkways, or somebody that's a little bit more knowledgeable about the type of trees and the tree health and such. Anyway, that's my comments. I'll open it up to Manny. If you would like to make some comments.
Yeah, this is something very, I think, very specific when it comes to the trees, especially that in Biscayne Park, we see that we have all kinds of fruits and different type of trees. Though we always experiencing something, and then like myself, I keep on bringing more plants and more trees that I have no idea if those are going to affect that, because you just want to make your property look nice, look good. But when it comes to have to face people requesting or inspecting the properties on these trees, I think it's going to be a need of more education, of knowledge about how to control this. We will need some, maybe a type of guidance if we are the ones that are going to be handling this, these tasks in the village. But I'll be willing to work on it. I I love trees, I love nature, and then that will be something that we can learn ourselves and find the right direction on. for the village. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Manny. Sander?
I'll be quick. Look, the big picture, I think here is that we went from having almost no real formal regulations on this. And we enjoy one of the most beautiful tree canopies in all of Miami-Dade County to what I think is almost as if we tasked you to tell us how to make sure that no trees ever get cut down in this village of Biscayne Park. I mean, I would just say that to the gentleman that did the presentation, I think there's sort of what we talked about earlier, where there's a middle ground, and this doesn't feel like the middle ground. This feels like a, like a lot. And I, also echo the chair's comments about something that we can not only enforce, but also not run into a lot of problems with our residents. Because again, look, my favorite book is The Lorax. I love trees. Trees are great. I think it would be hard to say that we have a critical issue in the village of Biscayne Park with the elimination of trees, given the fact that we have this exceptional tree canopy. I think the biggest eliminator of trees is hurricanes in Biscayne Park. So I think this, to me, goes a lot farther than I would personally like to see it go. There's the things that really stand out for me are two things. One is, before you can do anything, you have to have 3 arborists, provide concurring reports. I mean, I don't, I deal with arborists on a daily basis in my professional life, and they're generally professionals about what they do. I don't find them to be fraudsters or hucksters that are just willing to say anything to make you happy. I think the idea of the village having an independent arborist that can review things, because our board is not necessarily qualified to corroborate, that is something that I think is sensible. But to require a homeowner to go pay 3 different people to do something, I find that, well, I'll skip the adjectives. I don't think we should do it that way. The other, things that I noted are, you have these 4 steps to modifying a tree. Again, I go back to some of these things are like relocate existing specimen tree on site. Well, the problems that we run into with trees here at the planning board are, again, because we have small lots and somebody has a tree that they want to do some improvements to their house. And, who are we to say that the tree on your private property is something that, there are ways that we can deal with it, but to say that you can't add, to your house because there's something in the way, or you can't put a pool in or whatever. So this whole proving a hardship, like that word hardship in step 4, I don't like that. I think that is going to create problems for us because it turns it into, this sort of your legal right to enjoy your property. That being said, if you do want to modify a tree that, wouldn't ordinarily, it's a healthy tree and you want to cut it down, it's on your property. Again, with a small lot condition, then I think you should be able to do that. But I think you should be able to maybe have to plant another tree or multiple trees in other parts. Now, the idea of planting those trees on your property, again, which is in this document, is not sensible, because if you're already eliminating a tree on somebody's property for some reason related to the development of their property, I certainly couldn't expect them to plant what this is saying here, 14 trees that are a certain size or 7 trees of a different caliper. I mean, or pay $14,000 into the tree fund. Do we have a tree trust? I don't think we do. How that would be created, who administrates that, what that tree trust spends money on. I mean, there's like a whole layer of complication here that we don't need to get into. I think the requirement would be, okay, so if you're going to take out a tree on your property, then there's plenty of medians that we have all over Biscayne Park that we need to replant. We have issues with the old Australian pines that we're cutting out. We need trees on those medians. There's plenty of opportunities for people to have to, replant a tree, and that could be to where they would, whatever the cost of that is. We have a public works department. That could be something that gets figured out. But to charge a homeowner $20,000 or $16,000 or $14,000, I think that's, if you're talking 2,000, $2,500, something that's reasonable, I think that's something that would make sense. Those are my thoughts. So I do think it's well intentioned. I do think it's something that would be a nice addition to the code Biscayne Park. I just think that we are, the mission was not to create a way that nobody can ever cut a tree down on their property. It was to create something that puts a couple, like some guardrails for me on this process.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if it came across that way. Our intent was not to create an impediment for people to be able to cut down trees. I think that maybe the middle ground is to define what that specimen tree size would be. Right now, we have it set at 18 inches. We can always set that at a larger size, so we only capture the larger trees. Again, I think that the mission that we were charged with from commission was to try and find ways of preserving the character of the village as best as we could. But one thing that I think is really critical, particularly with the requirement of the 3 separate reports, is that the standards for what defines a good or healthy tree is not as clearly defined as, for example, your ADA code, which is very, very clear and very descriptive. The interpretation, the rules and regs and standards that arborists and landscape architects use to evaluate trees are highly interpretive. And it's in that interpretation that I think it's really important for us to get as much overlap with other professionals so that we can get the true story. If you want to cut that down from 3 to 2, I think that might be something that that could work. I certainly wouldn't recommend going down to 1.
Okay, what I said was that the village, I think it was your recommendation that the village should have someone who is like a third-party arborist that works for the village. So I think, look, I'm not looking for you to defend your work here. I'm just giving you honest comments on it. I appreciate what you're saying. I understand the direction from the commission, but I'm just saying, if you just look at Biscayne Park, it's impossible to argue that we have an epidemic of tree loss. So let's come up with something that's very sensible, but mild. And this is severe, in my opinion. That's all.
Yeah. We do have a provision in there as well, so that in the language that I've proposed, that if they cannot fit any mitigation trees on their lot, that they can put those trees in publicly owned land, provided that you as a board give them the direction to do so. And yes, I do agree. The existing tree canopy that the village has right now is second to none in the county, quite frankly. But for example, there are portions of Coconut Grove where the new Miami 21 code is allowing for much larger boxes, particularly in Shenandoah. And a lot of the tree canopy is being eliminated. And what used to be a community and a neighborhood that had a lot of trees and canopy is now changing rather quickly.
I know, but we're not Miami 21.
Well, that's why I think it's so prudent that we're having this conversation now, together with the bulk and articulation conversation of the architecture, because I think that they can go hand in hand, so that we can find precisely that middle ground.
Yeah, I don't want to, beat a dead horse, but I would echo Sanders' sentiment that this is probably a step too far. As I said with the McMansion zoning, simpler and smaller intervention is probably more appropriate. I mean, I think it's telling that you referenced, that you guys work with Miami Beach, and that a lot of this kind of draws on Miami Beach's ordinances. Yes, they have an entire urban forestry department that you helped, work with. We don't have an urban forestry department in Biscayne Park. And so I just worry about enforcement of this across the board. enforcement of this by our board, enforcement of this by code enforcement of this by the building department, who's tasked with verifying, what's been done prior to issuing a CO. I just don't see the level of staffing and, oversight in this small community to really, actually enforce this very complicated, very detailed ordinance. So I think this, we've talked about this before on the board, that we didn't have anything right in the code that talked about this other than deference to the Miami-Dade County. And that with some of the newer construction homes that we were going to begin asking them, the applicants, to provide a tree survey, so at least we had some clue what was on the property. But it was really about, that was kind of as much as we needed, maybe something that added the requirement other than the board just requesting it, adding it in the zoning code language that if you're doing, new development, that you provide a tree survey as part of your application, just to give us an opportunity to see what's there. But to create this, very detailed, somewhat onerous in certain ways, whether it's the multiple Arbus reports or whether it's this mitigation that to me seemed insane, that we'd ask anyone to plant 20 trees, whether on their property or on the city's. I just think this is an applicable kind of set of guidelines for Miami Beach. I don't think for Biscayne Park. So we understand the mission you were given, and I think we all share the concern and the sentiment that we value our tree canopy and want to make sure that it remains. But I think there's maybe a lighter touch we could give this this ordinance.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Sure, thank you. I have just a general overall question. Maybe I'm not quite understanding it, but the Florida statutes that you have, the second bullet item on there, it says that the government may not require a property owner to replant a tree that was pruned, trimmed, or removed. But that's kind of exactly what we're doing and in this language. So can you go over that? And maybe I'm just not understanding.
Sure. If the tree is deemed as a danger to property or persons, then the property owner can remove it without a permit, and the municipality, the village, cannot require them to mitigate for them. That's the extent of it. But in the event that the tree is not deemed a danger, then the recommendations that we're putting forward is that they need to mitigate for it. So that way we're complying with the state language.
Yeah, we're issuing a tree removal permit, but we're requiring them to find that it's deemed a danger.
Correct. They have to be able to prove that it's a danger to people or property in order to be able to not require a permit for removal.
So you're bringing up an interesting point, because you're bringing up the point that the Florida statute says one thing, and this may be something that's in conflict to it.
I just don't know if I'm missing something, because it seems like we're saying the opposite.
You bring up an interesting point. I didn't think about that until right now, that, if the statute says they can do it, then they can do it.
Yeah.
That's it. They can do it.
You don't have to mitigate for it.
Correct, but they still need to demonstrate and prove and to the village that it is indeed a danger.
So, but you're-
When they
you're
do
bringing-
that,
you're
then they
bringing
don't
up
have to
the point of,
mitigate
like,
for it.
You're bringing up
Then
the
they-
point,
correct.
which is how are we, like, we're not set as a village, like, how would anybody here receive that information from a homeowner that's saying, this is a danger, I have to do this? Like, who's here qualified to evaluate that, right? It's like, what do you do?
Right.
Yeah,
No, it's
no, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. And this goes back to what the chair was saying about this is another responsibility, not just for this board, but for the village. How do we deal with that?
Then I also agree that the 3 independent reviews is quite a lot to ask of somebody. And do you know by any chance approximately what that, just an ballpark what a review by an arborist would cost?
Well, we provide those services to some of our clients, and
Okay.
for a large tree, we typically charge anywhere between $400 and $500.
Okay, so that's about $1,500 right there,
Yeah.
The residents will
just to get that far. And then we would have an
will
application.
come here with a bucket of tomatoes and throw it at us.
fee And yeah, it's a lot. So I think one review by an arborist and a peer review by somebody at the village, if we had anybody to do that. Those are my comments.
And I guess maybe that peer review person would be the person who could evaluate the immediate danger of a,
Right, that would be the peer review, because they would have to confirm that the arborist is.
I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So I think that's the comment, like maybe another board might be that peer review or something. Because that's actually, I want to come back to that really quick, was a comment that I forgot to mention, which was brought up, was how do we enforce this? And if we're going to do something like this, we need to have clear mechanisms of enforcement too. You know, like from down to like an emergency police officer saying you can't cut the tree anymore to who is in the village hall is going to manage all of these requirements. We already have a staff that is very, very overworked, and adding another layer of work to them. You know, we have to, if we're going to do something like this, we have to consider how it's going to be managed by us as a board. Another, you know, we're a volunteer board here. We are on a Monday night. Other volunteer boards or even a staff person dealing with it. So I think that's a very valid point, as to not just the ordinance, but how is the ordinance can be implemented and managed.
Okay.
Got any further comments or?
No, thank you so much. I do appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation and your time. Any further things? Okay, so I do want to hear you. I want to move on to our next item so you can just hear the topic of it, Alex, if you can. And Giovanna, if you want to hang out and listen to it also, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
The next item I want to talk about is I'm going to drop down to discussion C, review of residential sector C in regards to detached two-family and dwelling type and minimum lot size. So I touched on this our last meeting, and you know, since this is something that is coming up, and the reason I brought it up last time was because I wanted us as a board to unifiedly talk about it and come up with a suggestion to the commission to consider. You know, obviously we can't make any land changes ourselves, but you know, we clearly see the issues of duplexes in our code. I mean, granted, they're a good, you know, 1/3 of our property, so these are people that own their properties also, but in that section. But do we want to consider down zoning? And I think we talked about it briefly last time, and I think there was some consent, not consensus. We discussed it. There was some for it. With the new McMansion ordinance, you know, we do have the issue of duplexes that can be redeveloped into larger homes and larger two-story duplexes and things like that. That doesn't, you know, just because what we're doing here in the single family doesn't mean it's not going to be probably happening in the two family. So, you know, obviously we could make a recommendation to the commission if we'd like to, but do we want to consider and really consider removing the two-family zoning out of zone C, and then whatever language would have to change in that regarding that would have to be, you know, revised also in our code. But also I think, you know, we should maybe consider that we grandfather people that are currently property owners, because we can't take away somebody's right to their property. But we can also say, you know, 20 years in the future, if it gets sold, you know, it needs to come into compliance or something like that. The object is to kind of to control the future of development on that side of the park. So that being said, I'll open up if there's any discussion. Charlotte, were you here last time we talked about it?
No, I was not. I missed that.
So
meeting.
I brought it up last time because of, you know, we are having development on the sector C. Sector C is a two-family zone. So that, and we also have, we have a resident that's coming in front of us subdividing their lot to build two structures on it that could be two duplexes. Legally, it is that, it's in our code. So do we want to, since we are talking about it, do we want to be proactive on this and maybe, make some recommendations to the commission? So that's where we're at.
Yes, I wholeheartedly say that we should ask the commissioners. Duplexes, non-conforming uses, they're grandfathered if they exist, but no additional duplexes may be constructed, and at any point modifying existing one. Again, as I said last time, I thought that's what the code already said, and I was surprised to hear that it could even go. Yeah. So I don't think that should be.
I support you on that.
Okay, so we're, Manny, what are your thoughts?
I would say yes, that, try to remove part of it. Also widen those laws. Especially when it comes to.
I got it over here. I'm recording it too, so we're still on tape.
Especially that lot that trying to divide, that is gonna make such a little lot, what type of property you wanna build, then you're gonna end up building those 2-story little lot. And, so, yeah, I agree that we should try to eliminate that on time and ask the commission get involved in.
Yeah.
Just quickly, your thoughts on this topic?
So I'm not, can you guys just explain a little bit more about why you wouldn't want another duplex? I mean, I get the lot split in that situation, but any more ground that I
So
could
currently,
be aware of?
Sure.
so currently our code in sector C, which is, the east side of the park, allows for detached 1-family and 2-family homes, which means, freestanding buildings, 1-family or 2-family in that freestanding building. So we also, that sector also has a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. So we're facing the potential of homes being, and actually potential that single-family homes that exist in sector C could be removed and replaced with new duplexes. Duplexes could be removed and made replaced with new duplexes that are bigger, like the photographs that we were shown tonight. Plus also the lot size is smaller than the rest of the park is all 8,500 square feet. They're 6,000 square feet. So some of the lots start peaking out at 12,000 feet or start at 12,000 feet and conceivably be divided in half, thus increasing our density. So the object, I think, is that the suggestion is do we want to control the density that we have and not add to it through the way our code is written right now? So that's kind of the thought on that. Since we're talking about the McMansions and things like that, this is something that we might want to consider.
So it's just going to be, the real fear is just bigger duplexes for that area.
More.
And more, but is there quite a few properties that are at that 12,000 size that are duplexes?
I don't have a number, but
Okay.
there conceivably could be.
What, Scarlett, it's a good question. And I think one of the things that I would ask our planners to look at is, I don't think we really have a good handle on the inventory of our lot sizes and the inventory of our stock. I don't know if anybody really has, I've never seen any strong stats on that, but you asked a question like, is there an issue with duplexes, right? And so I would just tell you that in general, the thought process is that this is what makes Biscayne Park special is this, it has this great single family home feeling of kind of non-transient, a non-transient place. And inevitably what happens with duplexes is they're bought as investments. When you buy something as an investment and you have a high millage rate like what we have, taxes go up, your expenses go up, you make less money owning the property. And then what suffers is the repairs and maintenance. And ultimately, we have issues where, we have properties where there's, 6, 8 cars parked out front. Repair and maintenance is suffering. Tenants are in and out. They're more likely to be used for rental and Airbnb, which is something that we need to be careful with. Legally, there's lots of issues why we have to be careful with it. But so I just, in the sense of knowing, like, exactly, kind of knowing who your neighbors are, and that knowing that they are like really invested in the community. I find that's it just, maybe I'm making a generalization, but I find that you're going to get more of that from people that are actual single family homeowners than transient renters. And for a small community with only 1,000 homes or whatever that you want to call them, to think that 30% of them, which I think is probably what the number is, Commissioner Kennedy actually has the stats. It's alarming because it's like now you've got, you're such a small community, and almost 30% of your community is transient in a place where it's not really what we're trying to, we want people here that are invested in the community, that care about the community. So, I think that's, a lot of that is maybe my personal opinion, but that's why I went on to this board, was to hopefully share that. And I think the chair is doing a great service by bringing this issue up, because it's the property that was the catalyst for this conversation. That property owner brought forth a plan when I first got on this board, and I remember we all looked at it. It was literally like a 2-story. It looked like an apartment building that you would build in like Wynwood or something. Like, it was industrial. It would have been something that if we had allowed this to be built, they would have been talking about us for decades. And now that property owners come back and says, "Oh, I want to split my 13,500 square foot lot into 2 parts." I was like, okay, so why do you want to do this? And, I didn't think of it, but, you could kind of see through what's going on here, which is that you could build 2 duplexes on that. And now we already have an issue with, septic, sanitation doesn't exist. Like, increasing density, like that's the opposite direction of where we need to go. So there's some strong arguments for looking at this carefully. And I'm glad that the chair brought it up.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank
Senator.
you very much. That helps a lot for me to understand what the bigger picture is. Thank you.
I mean, one of our saving graces is that we also require a 75-foot frontage. So a lot of lots that, like, just say they're really deep, you can't divide it because you have to have a 75-foot frontage. I mean, so there is, the stock of the number of properties. I would be curious to see the survey of what could be done on that. 12,000 square foot lots that could be divided. I think we all expressed some support towards this. Again, I don't want to come across as like we're trying to take away people's rights to do with their existing properties. But I think that it's something that, like Xander just said, we need to look at the future for our part. So what I'd like to do probably maybe is come up with some language as a memo, and I think we meet again before the commission meet one more time. We meet on November 1st, so the commission, I think, is November 2nd. So I'll come up with a kind of language so that we can like look on it and just send a memo as a group together to the commissioners, saying, "Hey, let's look at this." Alex, question for you: have you dealt with downzoning before, and what type of reaction has there been, or? It would be the commission. We're just, yeah. Yeah. That's, I guess that was a lawsuit that happened when, what did it go to the Supreme Court or something?
Otherwise, it's considered a taking. That being said, we certainly, and we look, so because I do a lot of work on Miami Beach, it's like, that's like a one walking Bert Harris Act is their daily legislative sessions. But I guess that's on the record. That's probably not good. We could, I think, certainly to Ed's point, we could say, they're a legal, duplexes are a legal non-conforming use. And therefore you can't, we could say you can't build any more of them, but the ones that are here are legal and non-conforming. And as long as they're, but then at some point, if you go through a substantial improvement, you know, to bring it up, where you have to bring it up to code, then they would be required to meet code, and code at that point would be single family home. I mean, that would be the, you know, when you do legislation like this, you think about it in like 25 or 35-year swaths of time where you're going to say, okay, in the next 25 or 35 years, we're going to have, you know, 5 or 10% duplexes instead of 35% duplexes. And, you know, it's just a process, and it's thinking long. I think that's, yeah. Whereas a taking is if it's something where immediately you've now said duplexes are illegal and you can't operate a duplex. Well, now somebody's like, well, okay, I own this. It's illegally. Yeah, that's your point. And we understand that.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll create a memo. We'll send it up to the commission and let them, you know, bat it around if they even want to touch it. They want to, you know, up to them. But we being on the front lines, we're seeing what's happening. This is kind of what came up for me and now obviously for the board. And also, I just want to clarify too, make sure that we, you know, we're clear that the individual that is dividing their lot, they are legally allowed to do that. We just have our opinions as a board. But you know, when it comes time to vote, we'll vote on the code, and the code says so. I don't want to seem like we're pointing anybody out specifically on this. With that, I'll say goodnight and thank you very much for your time. All right, and then finally, we have under our discussion the driveway ordinance. It had first reading, so we have a red letter version of it was distributed to you. For us to, again, we can go through it and then go through it again on November 1st. If you want to, if the board feels like they want to take some time, we do have another meeting before the commission meets.
I'd like to ask if I understand correctly that they are modifying sort of the time for bringing driveways into conformance from what previously said, you know, at which point we might do a substantial improvement, to now saying everyone in the village who has a non-conforming driveway, which is a lot of homeowners.
Yeah, so
Into conformance by December 1st, 2022. Good luck with that.
yeah, I parentheses and highlighted and starred that. I'm like, we're actually going to make people that actually got approved, permitted driveways that might not meet this code, this proposed code, to all come into compliance by December 1st, 2022. I think that is a huge burden.
What are you going to do? Start finding, you know, 50% of the village because,
Yeah.
just it's not realistic.
So the previous, if you look at the previous driveway ordinance that was passed back in 2014, number one, which was it struck through. This is really how it should be read: is non-conforming residential properties that do not have an approved parking surface should be made into compliance. And we did that until what happened is there kind of was a revolution and revolt, and the commission put a halt to it. You know, kind of said, okay, we're going to put a moratorium on it after they approved it. So I agree with you, Ed. I think that was my first comment was, how are we gonna enforce that level of compliance in a year?
Yeah, this is, I actually agree with you. I think that the way it read is the proper way to say it, which is that if you have something that you never got a permit for, you know, that's different than basically what this is setting us up for, which is people that have gotten permits but aren't in conformance with this particular new ordinance are now going to, I mean, it's not a reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, if people revolted before,
I mean, the people that were here before that wanted the tent in the front yard, can you imagine if somebody came in and said, okay, I have a permit and now you're telling me I have to rip
Right.
it out or something in order to make it compliant? That's tread lightly on that one. That's
yeah, I mean, look, I think from our perspective as a planning board, maybe we've done our job as far as what this is supposed to look like. But the people that have run for office will have to deal with the first section of this, which is how they're going to enact it. But I agree with you completely. I agree with both of you.
other than that, the rest, kind of looks pretty, no wheel stops, no artificial grass except for turf.
Should we maybe make a recommendation of a time frame that we would want to give it, maybe more like 5 years to come into compliance from? Just a thought.
Yes, I mean, I think you're right. I have a hard time with something that if they have a permit for it and they built it per the permit, but it's not conforming to the new code, making them change it within a year, I think we should not
Yeah.
recommend.
My sense is we should just stay away from that completely because I just don't think it's within our purview. I just don't think it's like how long things take to get implemented. Like that just feels legislative to me. And I think that's my sense on it.
But the thing is we're the ones that are going to be dealing with it when they come in here screaming.
No, I get it. And that'll be, and yes, you're right. You're 100% right. But that's the job we signed up for, I guess.
Yeah, but we also, the reason that this is here is they want our comments. So if not, they wouldn't come back to us. I mean, we as the planning board can make comments on this.
Is it?
I would just, if you wanted to keep it loose, I would just say that letter number B on 5.6.1 is going to be very difficult to enforce, and we find it onerous to the people that have permits.
I think it's almost like I can't even, like if somebody got a permit like 4 or 5 years ago for something, I would, if I was that homeowner, I would say, I'm not changing. Like, good luck. Like, I'm not doing it. I already.
I think even a homeowner who didn't get a permit, just a homeowner who's had a home here for 20 years and maybe hasn't improved their driveway, which is again, a large swath of the village, they're gonna say the same thing, we're not doing anything like that. If and when I decide to redo my driveway, I'll abide by your zoning code, but you're not just gonna come put a thing on my door that says, hey, in 1 year, redo your whole driveway.
I think that the village attorney would probably advise against it anyway. I mean, it just feels like we're itching for a lawsuit.
But it's interesting that this was typed up by our village attorney and sent to us.
And that's a new addition, right? That red is,
It's in red. It was added at the
that's
last.
not the
commission
only,
meeting.
I mean, the red is just the latest stuff they've edited, right? More stuff that-
So that,
This is the first reading. This is the first
so
reading
that's
of
it.
the revision that they made at
So that's it.
the October meeting.
Yeah, okay. Well, you're right. Who else did it? But I mean, somebody with a law degree thinks that this is a good idea.
Being on the record.
Well, I mean, what do you, we've already said it's not a good idea, so I don't know. I mean, but you're right. I didn't think of it. Somebody typed it, somebody that was an attorney. What are you gonna do?
Any comments?
No further comments.
I got all.
Yeah, I almost like we need to take out the thing that says, or has an existing parking surface that was lawful before the passage of this ordinance.
It could be that maybe that was direction given by,
Well, no, it's obvious
Commissioner?
this is the direction from the commission.
yeah, so look, I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if they thought that one through.
yeah, and unfortunately, what the repercussion will be is that there'll be a revolt and then everything will stop and then we'll have another driveway ordinance.
This
again,
entire
And this whole thing goes
ordinance
kablooey.
They'll have another moratorium. basically.
And then another moratorium and then we'll talk about it again. Yeah, they've got to fix that.
Or they can just strike the word, it says all legal non-conforming residential properties or parking service shall comply with the permit. They could just take out the word legal, all non-conforming residential properties.
Well, I would say
That's a-
they could, maybe the note is that they could better clarify to say that that it's a look, the way it was written was good. A non-conforming residential property that do not have approved parking service. Like the way it was written was if you have a non-conforming property that doesn't have any approvals, then you have a certain period of time to figure it out. Now,
That's how it was before. up above.
well, this is even worse, right? And then so Ed's point was like, well, if I've lived here for 20 years, why, it's been like that. Yeah. So I'm not getting it. I don't know. I mean,
I'm just saying, if we gave somebody a permit and then now we're telling them they have to change it, I think that's not.
totally agree with you.
If they're changing it or they're updating it, then yes, they have to change it, but
We are in total agreement.
any other comment on this? We're all in agreement on that one part that we've been talking about?
Yes, I'm agreeing.
And the time frame, we would just say that even under any circumstances, the time frame needs to be, I mean,
I mean, the interesting thing about the driveway ordinance is that we have seen a steady stream of people coming in and putting driveways in the last 6 to 8 years, whatever it is. So it has been working, so having a time frame for non-conforming, I think is a good idea.
agreed.
Just the other stuff that's.
No, I'm just saying that what is that time frame? Is it December 2022? Is it, December 2024? I don't know.
We'll leave that up to them.
Yeah.
The above it was 1 year above, so.
Right.
Anyway, okay, so we did that. Any further business? Any comments? Okay, our next meeting is going to be November 1st. And if we're in agreement, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I will second that.
at second. Okay, we are adjourned at 9:22. Everybody just make sure you turn your microphones on.